Welcome again. My name is Patrick Dunphy, and just bringing me up so I can say hi. I won't be on video for the whole session today, but I will be to start the day. So again, I'm the VP of Marketing, Alliances, and Strategy here at Anark. I'm joined today by Jim Martin. Hello, Jim, on video mute. How you doing?
Everything is good. Good to see everybody here.
Great, great. Yeah, always a good group. So we're particularly excited about today's session. We've been hard at work as a company putting together a whole host of new product features. Those are coming through in the use case demos that you will see in today's session. And these have been based off of conversations with some of you that are on the call today and a whole host of people that are not on the call today, some future Anark customers, some current Anark customers, some industry experts, partners that we have in the industry. And we've put together what we think are a cross-section of really good use case demonstrations that will be able to showcase the power of the soon-to-be released Anark Collaborate platform, which is due out next month. So with that, we'll kick things off with a couple of slides. And I'll take us through the agenda, and then Jim, you can get us started in terms of the what's new in model-based collaboration topic. And then we will go through a series of use case demos. I'm not going to read through them all here. We'll spend plenty of time on each one as we go through today's session. And then we will get into, to close things out today, the upcoming release that we have in August, next month, right around the corner, really soon. And upcoming events, recent blogs, and other content and topics that are in the news and current events for Anark today. So with that, why don't I toss it over to you, Jim, and you can take us through what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, what we're going to dive into a little bit more today is many of the conversations that we've been having with customers that are trying to solve the problem that you see here. Many of the PLM conferences, many of the conversations always revolve around PLM and the engineering data and the challenge of getting standards-based information out to everybody else who needs to consume it. These people are not inside the PLM systems. They're not, and the way that information gets out and is collaborated on with everybody else, whether it's suppliers or partners or is very haphazard. It causes a lot of problems as far as product delivery. It slows things down as far as teaming opportunities. There's no traceability on decisions. We've had many conversations with customers that say, "Look, we talked to a supplier, but then we lost the chain of emails or other ways of tracking what was decided." One of the use cases that we'll talk about a little bit later today is there's a tolerance change that needs to be made. All the information that the PLM systems have out to people who need to operate off of the same type of information, but do it in a way that's a lot more easy to get to and understand. For 20 years, we've been doing this with 3D PDF documents or technical data packages. For the last 10 years, we've had web-based or HTML solutions to allow everybody to operate from that same type of truth. Again, we are not an authoritative system. The authoritative systems are the PLM, the ERPs. What we are trying to do is make all of that information more consumable and actionable for the different use cases that you see on the right there in the green box that we're going to start to work through today. With the 10 years of HTML and web-based experience that we have, we're going to show you some of the use cases that we've built with the more recent additions and enhancements to the Anark Library platform. And that involves content. How do we publish content in a way that's easier, faster, takes advantage of AI where it makes sense to generate the type of content that is needed for somebody to consume it. And then the new concepts over the last couple months that we've talked about are spaces. And spaces take content and put it into a collaborative experience that's entirely web-based, that allows for markup, resolution, sorting of information, and archival and dispositioning back into your authoritative systems. But again, it's all under one browser window. It's all under one environment so that everybody who needs to come together and talk can have a uniform environment where they're communicating and collaborating on problems. One of the things that we've been showing people, self-contained HTML and the connected documents that we'll talk about, is how are we doing this? And so we'll show you some of the examples where the layout and the way that information is presented is now established through a framework that we worked on a couple years ago. We put it on a shelf, then we brought it back out again for the latest technologies that we needed to have. Similar to what we do with 3D PDFs. If you think about a 3D PDF, when you pick a view, you're activating the view and you're activating information. And so this is exactly what you're going to start to see in these different use cases. So we have a technical product platform that allows us to put together very rapidly user interfaces that combine what is called a .light file, which is the user interface, and that's just HTML or JavaScript technology, and a TypeScript file, which together gives you the logic. I need to look at something, I need to see it in a certain way, and I need to use this information together with the visual to give you an experience that's important. And that could be for 3D CAD, it could be for drawings, it could be for metadata. And so the way that this works now, anybody who's experienced developing a template in 3D PDF or legacy web-based products, it wasn't rocket science, but it could be very tedious to get to the point of creating a template. And the template combined with the content gives you the experience. Well, what we're starting to do going forward, we can go through and edit these files, generate panels very quickly, pick and choose the panels that are important for a use case, and we can develop templates that we compile, and then we publish and use the templates. And we can start to build up this library of panels and templates very quickly to show all the different use cases that we're going to talk about. But at the end of the day, and this is greatly simplified, you may be on your desktop pushing content. You may be using our automated publishing system tied into your authoritative system to push content over. And this is the raw information that gets combined with the visual to create this user experience that's now Anark Collaborate.
That's great. So I just wanted to say, for those at home watching this, that was really fantastic, Jim. I was clicking through those slides. You would have thought Jim practiced this 10 times over. Excellent stuff. I think that's the fastest I've ever seen that presentation go, which is great, so we can get to the demos. Me personally, I'm way too long-winded to do what you just did. So thanks for being brief there so we can get to some good demos. And I think, if I remember correctly, you have the first example. So the first example that we were going to go through is the product content viewer and design review examples, one of several use case demonstrations that we have today. All right, take it away, Jim.
All right. What you're looking at here first is content, technical content. It could be documents, it could be 3D MBD, it comes from all the different MBD CAD systems, could be automated out of PLM, which we'll talk about in a second. And that content can be used within collaborative spaces. And so we're going to dive into these a little bit more. So the first thing I wanted to show you was a couple of examples of some very simple viewing content. So we're going to use the ball valve a lot and some of the legacy NIST models that everybody's seen over time. So when I double click on that content item, what you're seeing here is something that you've seen from Anark for a while. We've had variations of web-based content for 10 years. The way we built this is through the system that I just described. So we have a panel for the viewer. We have a panel that is the model views. We have a panel for the tree. We have a panel for the attachments, and I'll show you some of these examples. And we have a panel to download this HTML from a hosted version to a self-contained version, because that's the direction that we're going with all this. It is another option that people have for technical data distribution outside of 3D PDF as a self-contained technical data package. So let's go through this. Think about behavior, user behavior, and the content that needs to be displayed. So this user behavior, this panel drives this viewer. One of the biggest differences I hear a lot, or I need to explain to people, is that people who are used to 3D PDF, 3D PDFs can only have one viewing window. HTML has no such limitations whatsoever. So we could do all kinds of different interesting things. So these are similar things that you've seen over years. I'm going to apologize a little bit if the graphics are a little muddy. I do need to investigate that after the webinar. But yeah, you can see these different views. This comes from Action Engineering's Valve. I can expand out the model tree and look at different things. I can pick this and I can isolate that, and or I can zoom in on it. So the behavior that we can build in the viewing approach. And the other thing that we can do is we can always attach. We can attach information. So tell me what you think a technical data package is and what needs to be attached to it, and we can help you get there. So in this case, we attach the JT file, we attach the QIF file. In the case of a document, this is a Word document. So Word documents, Excel documents, PDFs, we can now attach those and visualize them as part of this new templating approach. If you wanted to attach an STL or some other visualization format, currently, we do attach a step file, but we're not visualizing it. QIF, we're not visualizing it. This doesn't mean we couldn't do this in the future. It's just it's a matter of deciding what is the important templates and what's important to visualize. And of course, there's a business decision, right? There are libraries out there that allow you to very affordably visualize certain types of standardized documents. And then in other cases, you can go through and say, hey, for the JT, the QIF, and the step, I just want to go ahead and download it. I'm not going to do that here. So I'll pause there. And then now I'm going to go through and say, look, I really do need a self-contained version of this HTML. So this is yet another capability that's built into this template. And all it's doing is just generating the same type of information that was used to generate this hosted one. You can see here it went into my download folder. I can pop open a new tab. You'll notice in this case, I'm not, just to be very clear, this is hosted. This is a standalone file that's sitting in my downloads. And you can see the behavior is exactly the same. You'll notice here, though, we removed the button that generates a self-contained HTML. The behavior's very similar. I can expand out. I can look at the peer review. So now we tell people, what do you want to have in this environment? What do you want to see? And do you need to have it hosted? Would you like to have options to have a self-contained version or some combination of both of these that might be interesting to you? So I'll pause there because we have a lot of use cases we want to get to.
The thing that I wanted to say here is this is essentially the next generation of technical data packages, right? Like this is where this is headed. You started, if you click on that tab on the left, right? We're just getting started with the demos today. This is really traditional, if you think about it, in terms of what's possible. A bunch of content brought together into a single data package where you can view it, interrogate it, understand it. Our level of being able to publish high fidelity PMI through into the models and the visuals that we're seeing here is second to none. But other than that, it's pretty standard fare for us. What is unique is this ability to download this offline ready self-contained HTML data package. But yeah, so as we go through this, but we wanted to get to a lot of other interesting use cases that go well beyond technical data packages. And but think about this as the foundation for everything else that we can show today, where we've automatically packaged up this content and made it accessible for a whole host of collaboration use cases.
People that want to start experimenting with standalone HTML versus maybe they've been using 3D PDF and they want to explore this. It's fairly straightforward for us to go through and allow this for them to test out the ability to create self-contained HTML technical data packages based on their existing work that they've already done with Anark Workstation, Anark Publish, or other MBD adapters that they already have in place.
Absolutely. And then you end up with an ultra portable package that also these standalone HTMLs and web-hosted HTML packages, these are extremely powerful at handling large assemblies, right? So in terms of large assembly performance, it's night and day. Let's keep going with the topic. So the question, it's like I planted the question. I promise I did not, but it's our next demonstration. So thank you, John, for asking the question, saying that they don't use formal TDPs, but all of their models, drawings, and other technical content, I could assume, is managed inside of a PLM system. Specifically for John here, we have the Windchill PLM system. And I'll just finish the question, which is, do your systems integrate with PLMs? So yes, indeed, very much so. That is our next example. I promise I did not plant that question. That was just very well timed. We have not only the ability to integrate with PLM systems, all the major PLM systems, and we can then extract and package up all of that data into that web-based format that Jim was just showing. And then you can also make that available as a downloadable, self-contained HTML package. But we can also round trip that information. This is new enhancements that we've added to our reference integration that's been made possible by the architecture of the Anark Collaborate platform. And what I mean by that is anything you can do in the user interface of Anark Collaborate is accessible through an API layer that we have. And that API layer means if you wanted to create a space from a remote action in a different system, you can create a space. If you want to add content that's published from a PLM system, you can do that and automatically add it to that space for collaboration. If you wanted to add users, do other things, anything you can do in the user interface in Anark Collaborate, you can do through an API call. So more on that in terms of the example, but this is what we'll show next is closed loop collaboration. So I will actually start in Windchill. So now you should be seeing Windchill, and you're seeing a part object in Windchill that has some related objects to it, right? So this part is that same ball valve body part that Jim was just showing. And the related objects to this include the same documentation, all the types of content that Jim showed. It actually also includes a drawing as it relates to John's question as well, is you have CAD and drawings oftentimes managed in the PLM system as part of your designs. And all of this information needs to be shared with a supplier, with an internal review team, with an internal manufacturing team to do design for manufacturing review. And so we need to do that. In order to do that, all we have to do is publish to Anark Collaborate, and that will send all of this information to Anark Collaborate. Again, this is going to be a little bit cooking show because we have a lot of demonstrations to get to today. If you want to follow up and schedule a meeting with us, we can show all of this live. We can actually put in other data into this Windchill system or a PLM system and show that live. But right now, I'll just show that we essentially get this link that's generated. This is the space link. So again, that API call, when publishing content, we can package up the content, publish the content to Collaborate, create a space, add that content to the space, and do all of that automatically so that as a user, I've published this, but we just have to log in as Ed, our engineer, and voila, here we are in the system. So if I go back again, logged in as Ed, yep, this would be the link that brings me over to what I just saw, right? So in this system, I have a number of different spaces, just like Jim was talking about before. And the one that we're talking about is the A.3 version of the ball valve body, right? And so A.3 is the version that we're looking at. And after we published this from Windchill to here, we then went and created a whole bunch of comments, right? So there's a comment from a supplier to Ed, and I'm the engineer here, Ed. I would ask back in terms of the problem that they notified us about in terms of the 0.005 or 5 thousandths tolerance issue. What specific constraints do you expect? The supplier can get back to me and provide feedback and information on this. And then Sam, The supplier comes back and says, okay, this is what I see. And really what it comes down to is cost and issues and all sorts of different things that can add cost, time, and problems to this. So the supplier is actually asking for a tolerance relief, essentially. Can we loosen up the tolerance to 0.01 inches instead of 0.005? The engineer reviews it, says, okay, that's good. And the supplier goes off and does the work. Now, as the supplier goes off and does the work, they then need to share that information back so they could upload the updated part file to this space, right? So we could, in essence, upload that part file to this space, which we see here. And then Ed could commit those changes to PLM. But really what it comes down to is however you want to do this, one of the most important things that we hear from our customers all the time is whatever happens in this space, all of this conversation, all the collaboration has to take place here, but we need to trace that back to the PLM system. So, like I said earlier, anything you can do in the user interface of the application, you can do with an API call. And so we've added that to our template where this table, this information of all the collaboration could be downloaded as a CSV, as you saw that button. But instead what we did was we created a sync with PLM button. This will now run the action of downloading the CSV, turning it into a more readable HTML format, and attaching it to the Windchill object in Windchill. And so when we click on the Open in Windchill button, we're then brought back to the latest version of this, which now has this new described by document. Again, we can show this all live, but to go through every step, we wouldn't have time for the other demonstrations today. So this is that HTML roll-up of all the related data. Automated, fully front to back, closed loop back to PLM, and cross-linked so that we can link out to the Collaborate space, and we can link back to the Windchill part object. And our reference integrations understand PLM part level objects, engineering, EPM, or CAD document objects, as well as document objects like Word and other related document objects. All right, so as Jim says, I will pause there for a moment, but we have a couple questions that have come in. One is, beyond documents you include in the data package, does your API permit to share metadata? Yes, absolutely. So metadata in the PLM system, 100%. So as part of the publishing of the space, just one simple example, if I look at this, right, we're pulling some of the metadata from PLM, including the version number, the part number, and the other data at the space name level. We're also using the date and other stamps. And any other metadata can be published in two ways. It could be published as part of the collaborative space, or it could be published as part of the data package as a specific set of table contents. So for example, not in this one, but if we had time for another demo, we could show the full indented BOM structure being published with all of the metadata and attributes associated to the EBOM or MBOM directly in one of these data packages. Okay, so that's the answer to Didier's question. Thanks, Didier, for the great question. And then Ryan has a question. Windchill presents a message when you are looking at an older version of the CAD model. Is there a TDP of a newer version that you are looking at? And does the user know? Yes. So the TDP, every time you publish against each version or iteration in a PLM system, that will generate a new data package. And that's based on business rules. You could set that based on lifecycle state, or you could set that on every time we iterate the design. I wouldn't recommend that, but every time we iterate the design, publish a new data package. I would be more inclined to say that every time you uprev from version A to B, for example, that's definitely a point in time where you would create a new data package. And then for iteration-based publishing, you could use lifecycle states. So you may have A.2, A.3, A.4, A.5, and then at A.6, you go to pre-release, and that's when a publish action would happen. so that you can share that with manufacturing, so that you can share that with suppliers. But really what it comes down to is your business rules, your decisions in terms of when and how you publish an updated version of the data. Thanks, Ryan. Great question. If any of the answers that we're giving, you have more questions, by all means, add another question back to the queue, and we will come to that as well.
All of this applies to Team Center also. we're talking a lot about Windchill today, but the exact same concepts work for Team Center.
Great. I'm going to bring this back up, and we did get 2 more questions. There's one more related to PLM. If the supplier provides a CAD translation back, right, so uploaded the CAD file, upon PLM import, you like that I'm reading these live, everybody, I hope. Upon PLM import, can you provide translation service back to its native file format? Granted, who owns the file, and if it should or shouldn't be imported is on us. I think the short answer is yes. The longer answer there, Aaron, is we would need to take a look at exactly what you want to do with that use case. So maybe we can have an offline discussion about that one. Now the questions are flying in. So why don't we move on to the next example? But first, Jim, and I'll start to answer some of these in the chat. But first, Jim, is the self-contained HTML regulated by the Y14 standards? How would you answer that?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So at the end of the day, the Y14 standards are your design methodology and your CAD system of choice. And what we do is faithfully execute the creation of your design standards according to the whatever standards you have in place into 3D PDF, hosted, or self-contained HTML. So yes. And the behavior, yes, the Y14 behavior is built into HTML. The one thing I'll just say at a very high level, we have way more flexibility with how we can present information and build behavior into HTML than we do with 3D PDF. 3D PDF's been very good for 20 years, but the sky's almost the limit as to what we can do with HTML.
You do a great job of self-segue for your next example. Up next, I've just pulled it up on screen. You're going to take us through a revision comparison example.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that next. So what you're seeing now is, again, I'm looking at content. We'll constantly remind you of if you're looking at content that's been published a certain way versus spaces, which are collaborative environments that focus on the content. So what I'm going to look at here is the example that I published directly from my desktop of a different type of use case. And so in this case, we have revision 2 here that we've published. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to very quickly and simply look up an existing content item, the ball valve revision 1, and I want to do a quick comparison. And so basically I can go through and do a comparison here, and it generates the differences in the GD&T. And as expected, this is revision 2 on the left, and we can start to put some titles and other kind of metadata into these views to make it a little more clear. That's not super complicated, but you can see here on the right, you have 0.005. On the left, you have 0.010. And you can see there were 5 different variations. And the other thing, we've kind of started to skip over the relationship between something that we're discovering as part of an investigation. In this case, we're comparing and generating the differences. But notice how the content center collaboration that we've been talking about since the beginning of the year is all built into it. So we've kind of, I don't think I've mentioned content center collaboration in a while because it's become secondhand. It is built into all these different use cases that we have. So in this case, revision 1 to revision 2, and there's other things that we could be looking at where we can build these out. There's visuals and then there's logic. And so the logic currently in this layout is developing a panel that shows you revision. It's showing a panel that shows you the attributes. It has a panel that our magician developers said, look, Maybe we want to go over and just generate a space, include some other people, and try to resolve why there are differences. So I can go through and say, create a space, and it goes through and generates a space very quickly. And then here's the new space that was generated. We pre-built one of those that we can show you. And when we jump into this space, you can see here that it assumed that it was Ed the engineer, and he was the person looking at the content under and trying to figure out what's going on. And Ed the engineer now has multiple things that he's looking at. But you can see again, we're building content centric collaboration into use cases and experiences that allow you to very quickly go through and do this. And Ed may go ahead and tag Sam as our supplier and say, can you take a look at this? Why did this change? Just in case Ed forgot about the conversation. He can go through and tag the supplier, and then we can add, in this case, we had a tag called revision compare and parts. We could tag it for different suppliers. We could tag all the supplier one problems, supplier two problems. We can prioritize these, and we can start to sort these by priority, status, author. We can have multiple components if you have a complex assembly, and the amount of tags that you are allowed to apply are pretty much unlimited. If you wanted to, if you have certain tagging or metadata practices in your organization, you can inherit those and start to use them.
Can you add Sam to that space?
I didn't, and I could. And at the space level here, I can modify it. And so right now, here's the name and description, the members. Let me go, yeah. And Sam isn't in there yet. So now after we add Sam to as a member of the space, and here are the privileges, right? We're not going to get too deep into all this. What do you want the person who's part of a collaborative space to be able to do? Currently view comment. Maybe we want them to be able to upload some proof or documentation. Maybe they need to be able to download something that you attach to the space to work out the resolution of the issue. Generally, you're going to have somebody who's the owner who's probably not going to be the supplier. And we go ahead and save that. And now Sam is a part of that space. Open it up, and then Sam is in there. And I think I know why Patrick had asked me to do that, because he was going to reply as a supplier, but he couldn't because he wasn't a member of the space yet. But now he's a member of the space. And there it is. Sam the supplier, because you told me to change it, Ed. So there we go. But this is actually really interesting. We had conversations with small manufacturers who had email chains that were lost 10 years past on manufacturing decisions that were made that were never traced and understood as to why it would happen. And these are the type of resolutions that we can start to track and get back to people.
All right. Looks like next up in our flow here is the Translation Accelerator.
We're back to that same theme of panels. This panel was needed, this panel was different, but the behavior is slightly different. So let me go to the notes. And in this case, this Translation Accelerator, we're working with some clients that have multilingual needs. And so somebody needed to translate from English to German and modify. Do you want technical, simplified, units? We can go to millimeters. And when I pick this PMI here, we can see the original information that was part of that. And then we can go through and translate it immediately. These are all just different panels that have been developed that can go through and take information and use it appropriately for the person. The thing I like a lot about it is the practical meaning. In the case of a node, it's pretty obvious. But if I go through and pick this one here, this is a roughness PMI. It goes through and gives the practical meaning in English, and we haven't added the portion here where we do the conversion of the English practical meaning to the German practical meaning, but that's pretty trivial to go ahead and expand and add that out. And so that really gives people that are working across different organizations a nice environment to talk back and forth. And this was driven by a real world situation with the customer that we're talking to that has a multilingual type requirement, which is pretty standard these days. Everybody's global, everybody's international, a lot of different teams working in different countries all over the world that need to communicate and collaborate in one environment. A different template that reused existing panels but added on an additional panel that tied into the information.
No, that's fantastic. Just I guess the one note on the PMI that you're translating there, that's nearly impossible. You can't just localize the UI of the software. You have to go into the CAD tool and translate the PMI, translate the notes. And so what we're doing here is, because of our deep understanding of the CAD geometry and PMI, we're able to access that information and translate it on the fly through this type of capability in these ultra flexible HTML templates. One question came up as we were going along here before we get to the FAI example. So just giving you the heads up there, Jim, for that one next, is what about 3DX, right? We mentioned Windchill, we mentioned Team Center. Yes, on 3DX, we actually have a customer case study on our website about integrating with 3DX. So that, and then there's a question about where is the data hosted by your portal? Basically getting into, is this on-prem, is it cloud, SaaS, etc. So by default, our software and our Collaborate, yes, it is a web-hosted application, but it is hosted in the hosting location of your choice. In other words, you could host this on-prem the old-fashioned way. You could host this in AWS. You could host this in AWS GovCloud. You could host this in Azure. You could host this in any hosting system that you'd like. You would simply install the application in that hosted system and then open up so that you can access it over the web and go through the usual security capabilities there, or security configuration there. And as well, just while we're on the topic, tie it into your own IDP, Active Directory, LDAP, etc., so that you can control the access through your external access control logic and not have to manipulate all of the access control within the platform itself, right? So lots of deep integration. Most of our customers are significantly sized enterprise accounts that have lots of those types of requirements. So we're used to that. All right, on to first article inspection. Jim?
This is yet another example using the same model. So you're starting to see a pattern here. When we publish using content, either automated or from the desktop, we're pointing to the template, and the template is providing the look and the behavior. So in this case, this is a first article inspection template that we're using. And so this is a content item that's really focused on accelerating the collaboration that goes on between people that are trying to resolve issues with inspection and manufacturing. And so a lot of this information, if you know the background of the action engineering valve that got made available publicly last year, it came out with Creo MBD models. Action engineering has scripts that created the PC tags. The PC tags have the visual and the semantic information. So we're able to go through and just grab that information and start to build out some additional panels. The panels on the left, basically all I did last night was republish the same model using this template that said, oh yeah, I'm seeing PC tags. I'm going to grab the PC tags, whether it's one or 1,000, and generate the inspection list over here. You can see the information that's associated with each one of these, and on the right, you can see more details on that particular product characteristic. Then you can go through and you can toggle it. I can upload the information.
Can you just put that one out of bounds? I just wanted everybody to see what happens.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah,
so like
so
point,
enter,
point
yeah,
one
piece
six
two.
168. Yeah, let's do 0.168. There we go.
Yeah.
Measure 0.168 below. Yeah, and we're looking at that. Yeah, and right now it's showing you what the ranges of what's acceptable and then what the boundary is at that
And
point.
I just filled out number 7. So just behind the scenes, people probably saw my screen flashing down in the lower part. But if you go to number 7.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, and so you can see over here, we're tracking, right? 21 complete on going through the operations. And again, these are mock-ups. We've literally been generating these very quickly as mock-ups and as examples of what people can do. So if your desired way of looking at inspection and how this should work is different, that's where we can have that conversation and start to get these panels and templates laid out the way you want. But the way this one is working is it's showing you a fail, an active. If it's open, it hasn't been addressed yet. And then we can go through and mark these off one at a time.
Yep.
And then if you need to upload information related to that inspection, you can go ahead and do that and send reports out.
Yep. And so question just came in on this, and I can start the answer. You can also add in if you'd like. But Ryan just asked if we can read inspection results from QIF or other metrology report formats to populate this data. The short answer is absolutely. We actually have a standalone HTML data package example with QIF where the QIF file is read in and we're able to see the QIF data linked over. That's the QIF plan data, but we could do the same for the results. And so, yes, the short answer is yes, you could. This was a, let's call it, vision of the future. We actually showed this to somebody recently, and they said, what if our suppliers aren't ready to use something like this? Can we do something that's a little more basic? And the answer is yes. And so that could be submitting the QIF. That could be visualizing the QIF against it. There's a lot of ways to do that. But we're able to just open and read in the QIF data and show it side by side with the CAD. So you could see the plan or the results for that. Great question.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that we just added to our website is some samples of self-contained HTML, and we can add it and make that available to everybody because we've been showing that for about 4 months. Perfect.
Great. Excellent. Loving all the questions today. Can you write QIF files and formats? That's the next question that just came in. No, David, we do not, but we have partners, and obviously there are solutions out there that can write the QIF data out, and once written, we can certainly ingest that or upload it and have it be accessible and readable in a human format side by side with all of this other data. Great. All right, multi-supplier collaboration. Everybody hang on tight. We're almost there. We appreciate you all standing in for all of this. Okay, so when it comes to multi-supplier collaboration, well, you need more than one supplier. And so in the case of this procurement individual that I'm logged in as over here on the left-hand side, this procurement individual has two different spaces, two different collaboration spaces. These are both PO spaces, right? So valve final assembly PO. So let's take the valve body part that we were talking about and add that to the full assembly. And now we're going to send a PO out to a supplier to have them do all of the final assembly and test on this particular product. And so the type of space that we're looking at is PO collaboration in this case, where we're working with the flow solution supplier. And this particular collaborative PO discussion has not started yet, versus this one is with Acme supplier, and the discussion has started. It's in progress, but it's the same type of space. So let's go take a look at this one quickly and see what might be missing. Well, yep, as the procurement person, I see the documents are not there that this supplier would need. And so I can go add those when I get a chance. But in the case of this one, I can see that I've already uploaded the PO document for the supplier. We do, again, have another demonstration that shows how we would connect this to an ERP system so that you would generate the space and generate the PO content from ERP within Anark Collaborate. But for the sake of today's example, we just uploaded a PDF file that would represent the PO output that you would get from that ERP system. And then once I'm in here, if I need to do anything, I can simply upload files and be off and away. So this is a different type of collaboration. We're no longer looking at and marking up and collaborating around CAD, now we're really talking about document exchange as well as visualizing the CAD data. But we do have all of that other data accessible to the supplier so that they can take a look at it. If I come over here to my supplier side, this particular supplier, who we were logged in as earlier, Sam, has access to a number of different spaces, one of which is the one that I'm looking at over on the left. But if I go back in and sign out as Sam and log in as Sarah, who is the other supplier, they have access to what seems to be the same space, but this is now that other space that we were working on, right? So this is the other space where our individual has this. So what I would do in this case is, just like I said, if I'm just getting started, view, I would add that PO to here and upload it for the supplier. And that PO document, or any other document that they need for that matter, is now accessible to that supplier the next time they log in. We could set up notifications, but this is now the supplier to space that we just added that document to. So now we're on even playing field between two groups, and we could go in and do the final work where the supplier now could come in. Again, a bunch of documents being dropped in at the same time, but this is now the final assembly test report, right? So the test report could come in, supplier has access to this area, and now again, as the space owner, I have the final assembly test report from the supplier. I can look at it, review it. I could even go in and start to mark it up and say, hey, in here, right, something, you misspelt our company's name, misspelled our name, and we're offended. Okay, so I could put that in here. And then again, because we're both side by side in the system, right, they could start to go back and forth. I will fix, right? Great. So we can do not just CAD markups, but full document markups against content that's in the system, and go back and forth, drive these types of discussions throughout. What's important to note here is this CAD data, these data packages, this content that's in both of these spaces for both suppliers is being reused from the source content that was published to the system. Because when a supplier logs in, they don't actually have access to any of the content. All they have access to is the space you've given them access to and the content that you've shared to that space. Everything else is off limits unless you grant them access to do so. But in general, we see this as a very effective way to separate all of the content that you're sharing internally and the teams that you have internally from the supplier organizations, of which there can be many. So you essentially create a temporary copy for each and make that accessible to everyone. All right, rapid fire. We only have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to skip over because we kind of did document review there, but we can do document review side by side with the CAD data. And so I'll just hand it back over to you at this point, Jim, to continue down the path and close us out for today.
What you're looking at here is just kind of an overview or review of everything that we've been talking about. The content and the rapid way that we're using modern technology to be able to go through and generate the user interface and the behavior that you're looking for, the ability to use that content in spaces. But the thing that we always come back to, if you can't get the MBD or the MBE information into the content in the neutral environment, whether it's 3D PDF, self-contained, or hosted HTML, then you're going to have problems. And so there's a good blog that Jim Mary, that many of you know, who used to be with Adobe many, many years ago and has been with us forever, wrote to talk about this. And one of the key bullets that I'll point to, that very last one, without naming names or anything, there's a lot of, oh yeah, we can do MBD going on out there at Realize Live, at PTC User, at CIC, all these events. And so some of our customers started to look at it and they realized that cheaper libraries, they thought they could buy something quick and easy and that would handle MBD, and it doesn't. And so they come back to us, we figure it out, and we solve the problems. We're going to keep talking about all this. We're going to keep talking about our support of all these different MBD initiatives and the ability to use Anark Collaborate for a lot of what we're doing. And the biggest thing coming up in August is that Anark Collaborate 26 is what we're calling it. Next month, we're formally releasing it. We've been working on it continuously.
Yeah, the short version there on the overall launch of the product is we've been operating in a beta mode. So everything that we showed today is in the beta of our product. We have our beta in the hands of some select customers. In a few short weeks here, we will officially launch this product, and everything that we showed today will be commercially available off the shelf. So we're super excited to run this event and bring this product out to the world. It's going to be a good one.
And right after that, we'll dive into September. We do have the PITAs and GPDS event, and we're going to be over in Sweden at the Nordic MB Forum, the second iteration of that event, hosted by our partner, Ariadne. Always go to resources@anark.com. You can see our blogs, our events that we're going to be at. If you're doing something that you think we should be at, reach out, let me know, and we can figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, we just got live in the questions for IMTS. So we'll have to reach out to David and talk about what we're doing there. I know we're not sponsoring, but we very well may have somebody there. So,
yep, and go ahead and reach out, set up a meeting with me anytime, and we can talk about anything. And if I don't have the answers, I'll find the person who does.
Fantastic. Excellent, Jim. And thanks everybody for hanging in there that stayed till the end. And thank you for supporting what we're doing. We look forward to talking to everyone at an event or another webinar real soon. Until then, everybody be well, and we'll talk to you then. Bye.